What's the first words we learn? No, no.
If you respect that no, sometimes they come back.
Hey, it's Brett Chittum, and I'm with Lawrence Technology Services, and I'm here with.
Jason Slago from CNWR having a great morning so far.
Yeah,
These
it
little
actually is
interesting
a good morning.
chats. These chats we have while we're trying to figure out what we're going to talk about today. So, we may seem organized. I am not organized. Brett is more organized than I am. So we have a list of topics, and we're like, what do we want to talk about today? And then about half the time, one of us has a topic that's not even on the list we want to talk about, and that is today.
Yeah, closing the deal. We're going to talk about overcoming 5 of your biggest sales challenges. Now, these are ours that we talked about. Yours could be different, and maybe they could mesh in a little bit. But when you think about sales challenges, Jason and I had a great conversation about that, and you there's ways you do prospecting. So prospecting, that's number one, right? If you think about prospecting, are you cold calling? How are leads coming in? What are you doing to get yourself out into the marketplace and let people know that you're actually doing a business and what that business
Yeah.
is? We kind of cater towards the IT side because that's what we do, but I think this is the issue in most businesses, right? Prospecting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things I told you at the beginning of this is like literally it took until about, I don't know, probably 18 months ago before I, in my naive nerd brain, figured out that there's a difference between a hunter and a farmer in sales
Hmm.
parlance, right? Like there are people that are good at closing new deals, and there are people that are good at cultivating and dealing with existing customers. So the history of our company, CWR, we're 27 years old, I think this year, 28.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
1995, so 28 years old this year. We weren't always an MSP, we weren't always IT consulting. We were born as an ISP, right? But like every salesperson until a year ago that we had was what I would consider a farmer or an account manager, right? Like they were good at, keeping existing customers happy. They were good at, growing those relationships with
Hmm.
customers, and they pop referrals out of them, and then they could go close the referral, right? But they were not good at the outbound prospecting piece of it. And so the fact then I read a couple books, spin selling,
Hmm.
Challenger Sale, a couple others, right? Trying to figure out, okay, how does sales stuff actually work? And what came out of that to me is there are actually way more differentiation in the sales roles than I ever had previously
Yeah.
imagined.
It's interesting because when you look at what you need to do to actually get people to come in the door, right? And for us, it's more of a virtual, right? Come on the phone and actually have a conversation with us. You look at cold calling, and are you getting the right lists when you're cold calling people? You and I talked about, you've got a list, and I also have a list of people within chambers, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're part of a large chamber down there, and we're part of a
Mm-hmm.
large chamber up here, and we do have a list of people. But when you think about that, how do you turn a cold call into a warm lead? I used to the one of the biggest things I would do is I'd call somebody and I'd say, "Hey, um, this is Brett. Did you get my letter? Oh, you didn't? Well, I'm glad I called you then." And that was one of the things that I never sent a letter. Okay, I mean, and just but there you gotta have a stick, right? And something
Yeah.
but when you're cold calling it, we talked about, telemarketers, they only last about 6 months because it's a hard job, and there's not many people out there that can do it well, but it's something that needs to be done. And when you think about what you do to cold call, it's really about just having a conversation and not being that used car
Yeah.
salesman. It's just saying, hey, what sucks? What don't you like
Yep.
about your, thing? But we'll get to that part in a minute. What do you
Uh-huh.
that's one. You
My
said
my
something.
outbound guy, he hates it, right? Like he doesn't like it. He
Hmm.
feels he wants to get rid of it as soon as we possibly can. And part of the conversation is that I think, based on people I've talked to, all or most outbound sales roles, like, so if you're a hunter, right, like there is
Hmm.
always going to be a cold touch aspect of that, right? Like
Right.
unless you get really really good at networking and can fill your funnel other ways. But uh how do you outsource that prospecting piece, right? Like I know
Mhm.
the other side of the world that I hang out in a non-zero amount of my time is the vendor world,
Yeah.
right? Like I hang out with all those people at the events. I sit in,
Hmm.
a couple Slacks with a bunch of them, and I talk to them all the time. And pretty much all of those companies hire dedicated, like BDRs, they call them, business development reps, and that's essentially somebody that's their job, is they make those outbound calls, and then they
Hmm.
set an appointment, and then that appointment gets handed to basically the outside sales guys, right? So now we're even
Yep.
more specialized, right? So now we have a role that does nothing but set appointments, and there are people that thrive in that role, like
Hmm.
extroverted people that don't mind being on the phone. I think that several people like Carrie Simpson,
Mm.
Carrie Richardson now, managed sales pros. I mean, she has some very poignant thoughts on whether the type of person it takes to be a good outbound prospector. But do you outsource it, right? Like if you have a pretty good outside sales guy, at what point do you outsource or use a dedicated prospecting person to feed your outbound salesperson? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, when you think about outsourcing, I want to bring that back and turn it around because you talked about yes, outsourcing. There are companies out there actually that will bring and generate leads for you. But it does it become cost prohibitive? What's your ROI? What's your close
Yeah.
ratio? Some things like that. And actually, I've never in the years I've done business and done sales, I've never outsourced. I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't. I don't think that because that first phone call is your company projection right up front,
Yeah.
and you don't
Yeah.
have if you're out. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were
No,
done.
and we we think of, when you think about that, what's the first thought somebody has of your company in that first phone call? And if it's not the person that can answer a question, because they're going to get the same issues you have. They're going to get people
Mhm.
that are saying no. They're going to get people that are saying I don't have time and all this. Well, I'm sorry, I'm right in the middle of something. And well, then why'd you answer the phone? And they're going to get that. But I believe I'm going to turn it back to outsourcing. Why not make you the outsource? So you think about a chamber of your size, about 1,400 members. So you want to cold call and prospect them. But first, outsource yourself to a networking event. Outsource yourself
Yeah.
to going to some of all those different chamber events that
Yep.
they have to just meet and shake hands with people. So then when you make that phone call, hey Mary, I met you last week at our morning spark, and you and you kind of we had a good conversation. I wanted to tell you about what we do.
I mean, we do that. Like, I've been attempting to attend more of our those sorts of things, right? And I've got
Yeah,
Drew's in a couple different networking groups. He's our outbound sales guy, right? And I kind of told him that's his pathway to making less calls is
right.
figure out a way to make the calls more effective, and that's a very good way. Networking and getting to know people gets over that, right? Like it gets over that. You've got 30 to 90 seconds to make an impression on somebody so
Hmm.
they stay on the phone with you. If you've had an in-person conversation with them, then you suddenly have more than 30 to 90 seconds, right? Like
Well,
you've broken through that first barrier.
I have a trick I do when I go to networking events. I've done this since I started in sales. People hand out business cards, and the people that I engaged with, that business card goes in my left pocket. The people that just handed me a card and it wasn't really a true engagement, they were just handing out cards, goes in my right pocket. So I know at the end of the
Hmm.
day, the people in my left pocket are the ones I'm going to call first,
Oh,
and actually
good
have
idea.
conversations. But prospecting, we're lucky on our end. I mean, we have had to do prospecting before, but with the channel, um,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got I've got 15 booked appointments this week.
It's a so I mean that's one secret, right? If you don't want to do
Mhm.
outbound prospecting, just grow a YouTube channel to 250,000 subscribers, and you suddenly won't have that problem anymore. The leads will start coming to you. So
Right. But you still
life
have to do
goals.
prospecting.
Yeah.
But I think let's go to the second point,
Yeah.
of the biggest sales
Yep.
challenges. Think about, showing value in your product,
Hmm.
right? The question I ask when I'm talking with somebody new is, oh, I got this current IT team and just not happy. Now, I learned this from a friend of mine, Bob, who says, "What sucks? What sucks?
Yeah.
Why is this call happening today?" Because I don't think you can show value until you can see what their pain point is, right?
Yeah.
How are you
I
going
for
to
sure.
solve for that? What are your
So
thoughts?
both. spin selling, and I mean, I haven't read We Ask or You Ask They Answer yet. Like that's on
Hmm.
my list of books to read, but I think that also advocates that sort of topic. I think these things need to be conversational, right? And
Yeah.
so I think this really happens. There's two showing value, right? There's the first one
Hmm.
during prospecting, which you have a very short window to convince them that they want to talk to you further. So you have to immediately show some value. But after that, right, like it is exactly what you say, right? It's like, okay, let's talk about some of your pain points. Like, let's talk about you and
Hmm.
let's not talk about us, right? Like, I want to talk about your business and, where you're struggling and just listen, right? Like, they will tell you where their struggles are if
Right.
you are sympathetic and you listen to them and you engage in an actual conversation, and if you can offer some meaningful suggestions other than just like, hey, like, oh yeah, we can totally solve that. That's not good, right? Like that's
Right.
not like the we can solve that. It's prove it, right? So
Right.
we tend to be part of the way we tend to show value early in this prospect is, and I think this comes from challenger sale. It comes from
Hmm.
story brand for sure, being as free with information as we can afford to be,
Right.
right? So it's like, if I'm talking to you about a problem and like I know off the top of my head how to solve that problem, I'm just going to tell you. I'm not going to gate that behind a sale,
Right. Right.
right? Like I feel like doing the right thing and showing value enough. Like I'm listening on the way, and I was listening to uh a book about stoicism, right? And it's like, just kind of ebbing and flowing with the way things go. And it talks about virtue. And, I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you do what you believe is right long enough, that things will work out okay in the end. And it's the same thing in
Yeah.
sales.
Well, you've got to be. It's a rule of numbers, right? And you look
Yeah.
at different ways. There's a book, The Power of Three, and how the human brain works. But number one thing in human nature is people like to talk about themselves and their business and the successes and the woes they have, and allowing them to do that. So that's when you want to show value. Showing value first is having two ears to listen and one mouth to speak.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason there's two and one, and so you think about listening and bringing, because you're right, you'll get so much information. I take notes on every call I do, and then I scan those notes, and I always have those from sales calls I've done, and I'll have notes of all their different points and stuff, and then go down in my conversation and go, you know, like you said, show what you can do, and not say, oh yeah, we can take care of that, but the
Yeah.
proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
It's the value part is, I think your value proposition is the biggest part, and what I think a lot of salespeople forget, because a salesperson wants to talk too, right? And they want to
Hmm.
shove down your throats what they can give you, and when you stop, sit back, and listen, I think that's what gives you the ability to actually create a connection.
Yeah, and I think it's a little harder, right, as your average outbound sales guy to sit
Mhm.
at, say, a networking meeting like that, talking to a business owner, and respond and show value because they aren't as technical, right? Like my unique challenge there is I am very technical, so my
Mhm.
challenge is keeping those conversations and the advice I give high level enough that the person on the other end of it can actually digest it.
Right.
But I'm very much a believer in the fact that, like, and we see it when we onboard people, right? Like the number of things that companies just accept is this is going to be broken forever, and learn to either work around it or change their process to be less efficient because of some challenge they can't get solved. It's
Right.
insane to me that people live with various things as long as they do.
Well, you have to be in let's the only constant in life is change, right? The
Hmm.
things are going to change, and you have to be able to ebb and flow. You said this earlier, ebb and flow as times change, right? How do we communicate today, and how did we communicate 10 years ago? Vastly different, right? and
Oh
and
yeah.
I think we technology has increased and given us the ability to grow and do things in ways we never could have imagined. So I think being able to hit on that, and know that, hey, we can't do the same thing we did last week. We have to be able
Yeah.
to it's ever evolving. So, this one I could talk about forever, but I think number three is an important one too that I wanted to get at.
Yeah.
And handling objections. So I gotta. This is oh, it's a huge one. But understand this: what is human nature? What's the first words we learn when we're a kid? What's the first
Mama
things
and
our
Dada.
parents tell us? Yeah, no. What's the first thing we're told as a kid? No.
No, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
no.
no, no.
Stop,
So
bad. Ow.
you walk into a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Lowe's or someplace, right? And someone's standing there and they got a greeter, and the greeter asks you a question. Hey, can I help you with anything? What's the first thing we say? No,
No.
I'm okay. I'm all right. Then we take 3 or 4 steps and go, oh, wait a minute. Can you tell me where the hex screws are? You know,
Yeah,
so I believe in the analogy in sales only, no means no the second time. you know,
yeah.
and
I've
and
heard 3 times is actually what I've heard. You drive to
yeah,
the third no.
and that's a good point because you think about it, that first no is more of a, especially in cold calling, go back to prospecting, right?
Hmm.
That first no is usually, hey, I don't know why you're even calling me. I don't know who you are.
Hmm.
Leave me alone. Is that no? The second no is, I believe they don't understand what you're selling. You haven't shown your value to them. So it's about coming back to, well, is there something that I didn't explain here to you? And coming back to your value proposition, right? Showing that value because
Hmm.
that's this they go hand in hand. And that third no is usually no, leave me alone. And either
Hmm.
you've pushed too hard or they just
It's
truly
actually
don't
no.
need what you're doing. Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
actual no.
yeah.
It's a hard one.
Because
What are your thoughts?
yeah, so I agree with all of those things there, right? Like there are several things you need to for there actually to be an opportunity there, right? Like they
Hmm.
have to have budget, they have to be able to afford it. You have to be
Yep.
talking to the person that can actually decide. You really ought to know how they're choosing. You need to know the timeline, right? Like those are, the things. And there's a mismatch when you get to that third no. There's a mismatch somewhere that
Right.
you're not probably going to work through there. That doesn't mean no forever necessarily, right? Like, but no now, and it when what we find is if you respect that no and you respect them and treat them honorably and respectfully,
Hmm.
that sometimes they come back to you when they're having a bad day, right? Like so
Right.
so much of this is timing, that you catch somebody on the right day and the sale is really easy. You catch somebody when stuff isn't on fire, and the sale can be considerably harder. But I'm going to throw some objections at you and see. I'm going to throw the big one at you. So the biggest
Ooh.
objection we tend to get is price, right? Being one of the more expensive service providers in the area, we get two flavors of that objection. Just the
Hmm.
one, I can't afford it, and the two, I could hire somebody for that amount of money. So how do you handle objections like that? Because I know you get them too.
I'm going to say first and foremost in my head when you say can hire somebody for that kind of money, can they? Think about
Mm,
that. They
they
cannot,
can.
right? And so and you look at, well, it's going to take you this much, and handling objections are really about being having finesse, right? So if you told me, hey, I can hire somebody for that, I would say, I would sit there. Let me math that out for a minute. What we're offering is going to cost you this much per year. If you hired somebody and purchased all the tools that I'm going to give
Hmm.
you,
That's a
um,
key. That's a big one.
you know, yeah, you're going to purchase all the tools that I'm going to give you, and I have 17 people behind me. So in
Hmm.
essence, you're hiring 17 people to do the
Hmm.
job of one person that you're going to hire. Then you've got to
Yeah.
pay for benefits. Can I?
Hmm.
I mean, I'm giving you something that's going to take something off your plate so you can sleep at night. That's how I'd handle it.
Yeah. I mean, the burden cost. People don't think about the burden cost of an employee when they do that, and
Hmm.
they're oftentimes not right. Like we've got a couple of our mid-sized customers that I'm talking 70 to 100 employees that for sure could hire a mid-level IT guy for the amount of money they're paying us a year. However, the other things you said come into play there, right? They're going to
Hmm.
hire a middle-level IT guy. That middle-level IT guy is still going to need some sort of tooling. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just YOLOs it and handles it by hand, right? But then on top of that, they're
Good
still going to
luck.
end up outsourcing and consulting on things because they're
Right.
going to get in over their head, or you end up with these like weird bespoke solutions that like just no one can support ever. And we've got a couple of those we're dealing with now that it's like what do you mean that guy was running that script manually every 30 days and didn't have it documented anywhere, right? And it's like, why would you ever do that?
Right.
Uh,
It's it's interesting how how businesses think, because when you show them the monthly number that they're going to have to pay for our services, that's all they see. When they see an employee, they see somebody that's they're going to have control over, right? And that might be another way to handle that objection is, I'm a client, you're a client of mine, you say what happens, and
it and that's fine. We have a client, right? We got a couple of manufacturing clients that they still maintain a help desk guy and staff. We do
mhm,
everything else. And part of the reason they maintain the help desk staff is they need somebody that's directly accountable to them, right? So that they
mhm,
can bark at them when they need stupid things done and they can control the
yeah,
priority and they can interrupt this day. And, we're a little, we will let them do that less to us.
yeah,
We ask them to treat our guys with respect, right? Like we aren't always in a position to drop everything and run over. So, in cases like that, it works. Like but that also comes with the cost of managing the guy, right? Like I
right,
would argue that like we manage our guys so you don't have to. So the
mhm,
total cost of your time in dealing with a outsource. So that's how I would handle. So we kind of covered two there. We covered price and I could just hire somebody. They're
right.
related, but they're different.
Well, I think price usually isn't the biggest factor. When you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, I think the biggest factor people have, and when they're making a decision, is the attitude of indifference.
Mm-hmm.
67% of companies make a change because of the attitude of indifference. 9% make a change because of price. So
Yeah.
when somebody says that seems expensive, there's something else in the outlier that's not, that we need to investigate more. Okay, so price is an issue. What else is an issue? What else are you facing? So we need to figure that out as well. And I think when we get to that point of figuring out what is other than price. So I used to say
Mm-hmm.
this, other than price, what's the issue?
Yeah, we because price we can talk about and we can negotiate, right? Like
Right.
there's probably some underlying thing. I'm gonna move us on because we're actually this one's running longer than they
This is
normally
okay. We're
do.
at 22 minutes. Closing the
Yeah, I'm gonna
sale.
push us.
Oh my,
Closing the sale. I am so
yes.
bad at this. This is why I can't. This is why I don't sales. Is because I can't do it. I can do all of the top things you just mentioned. I'll talk to people. I'll even cold call a little bit if I
Let
have
me,
to. Right. I'm good at showing value. I'm pretty good at handling objections. But man, oh man, if you put me in a room and ask me to make the hard close and ask you to what the next steps are or ask you to sign the thing, I shut down and I run away. I hide in a corner.
why?
I don't know.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Because
It's just a
really,
mental thing.
it's a mental thing, because it's actually the less talking, the least amount of talking you're going to do in any sales process is close a sale. And they talk about the power of three and how the human mind works, and I've mentioned that again already today. But it's true. You give people three options, right? You got good, better, best. And you say, these are the three options. Which one is going to best fit you? Part of closing the sale is getting that buy-in, right? And saying, okay, this one sounds like it'd be best fit my needs right now. Great. When do you want to start?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a couple of sales consultants and other people that they would take that like, do you want to sign today or is next Tuesday better for you?
Hmm.
Or Alex tells the story of sitting in a school board meeting and they asked for a couple minutes to like go over the thing, or they asked for another meeting, and so he goes, and this is bold. He's like, do you need me to go out in the hall so you can debate and
Hmm.
pretend that you're trying to figure out what to do, or should I just sit here while you do it, right? Like something along those lines. And in the end they signed. They Some of that boldness is good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm uncomfortable when people do it to me, so I feel like I feel uncomfortable doing it to other people, right? Like
So,
I hate the hard close when people do it to me.
well,
I hate it.
but understand this. The person that you're talking to has gotten to this point in the
Hmm.
process because they want to buy something.
Hmm.
So now that you've created the value and you've showed where
Yep.
their pain points are, The next evolution of it is solving for that pain point and
Yeah.
closing that and taking care of them. I never give somebody when I say, do you want to, do you want to sign now or wait till next Tuesday? I never give somebody an out in essence. Their out is just would be a no. I don't say next Tuesday because then that's hey, yeah, I'll call you next Tuesday and you never hear from them, right?
Yeah,
Um,
correct.
I want to know today if it's a no or not.
Yeah.
Now I will leave
And,
a room. I've done that.
well, and as a buyer, one of the things I've learned is just to, if there really is no interest, stop being nice and playing along, and just
Hmm.
early on cut it off. Right,
Right.
like don't, and I that's now we're giving some buying advice, right? Like just be honest with the salespeople, like, hey, timing's not right. Like, hey, I'm not
Right.
looking to make a change there right now. Hey, I'm under contract, right? Like, call
Mhm.
me 90 days before it's due. Hey, you're gonna have to move mountains to get me off of the solution I'm on now because of inertia and the cost of switching, right? Like just be honest with those people. So maybe I'll get over it as a result of, on the buying side, being a little more direct and upfront, and understand that most people, if they let me get, or they let you or anyone get all the way to the point where you are closing, then you've
Yeah.
already done your job.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. It's it's just it's I think people make it a mental thing because they don't think that they don't want the person that is like them, right? See, we're all
Mm-hmm.
different, right? I don't like being sold to, you don't like being sold to. That's probably what human nature has in common. But when somebody has reached out or you reach out to them and they get you got to get that mental picture out of your mind. If you've gotten to the close, you've earned the
Mm-hmm.
right to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. And at that
And
point, they're expecting it.
yeah, I think that's the biggest hurdle to get over mentally, is that
Mhm.
if you've done your job, then the close should be the hardest part of it. And
Right.
if the close is hard, it's because you haven't done something before it well good
Mhm.
enough to earn asking for the close. And
Right.
maybe, and the close doesn't have to be the sale, right? Like, and that's one of the big things that I mentally, if trying to use to get over that, like maybe we haven't done enough value and there's takeaways and I need to come back again. So the close is just the next meeting on the books, right? To
Yeah.
give me time to regroup and to whatever the objections are I can't overcome in that meeting, to give me time to digest them
Mhm.
and come back to them.
Right. And what we didn't talk about in this whole process is sometimes these are 2 or 3 meeting appoint closes, right? You
100%.
got
Yes.
you got that first initial meeting, you got the second
Yep.
one maybe with some of your tech team, and then you
Yep.
got the, "Okay, here's everything." Yeah,
Especially in
it's
the
pretty hard.
recurring, right? If you're selling fully managed, the industry average I think is a 60 to 90-day sales cycle on a
Mhm.
fully managed all-in contract. This isn't
Yeah.
usually a super short process.
No.
So,
And so that's why your prospecting so important because you have to have that funnel. If it's a 60 to
yep.
90-day process, you need to fill that funnel so you're closing something every week
Mm-hmm.
in that response. But
Mm-hmm.
it takes time to get there, right?
Let's
How
move on
about
to the end.
number 5, follow up,
Yeah,
account
follow.
management. I want to step back. Follow up is twofold, right? There's follow up
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't closed the sale. Okay. And then there's follow-up after a sale,
Mm-hmm.
and account management. And this
Oh.
goes to retention, right? I think sometimes people don't spend enough time in sales on retention and actually just having conversations with your clients on a regular basis, setting up those, you know, those quarterly or annual times to
Mm-hmm.
actually go
Business
over
reviews.
reporting. This is what we did for you over the last 12 months. We just
Yep.
want to show you and having those. I think that is important because that's as big of a sale as going
Yep.
because you're going to pay why not keep the clients, right? Keep that recurring
Yeah.
revenue, keep that client happy, but also understand that following up on during a sales process too. So I believe this is twofold, and I kind of went off on a
They are.
tangent. I apologize.
Yeah, no, you did. So when we were going over the 5 and you said follow up, I had assumed you meant after the sale, but you are 100% correct that
Mhm.
follow up. Like, what do you do? Do you send an
So
immediate, if you have a meeting or a conversation with somebody, do you send an immediate email like when you get back to the office with the like takeaways and summarizing the conversation?
I totally do. I believe in that. I
Okay.
believe that that's you. It's touch points, right? You got to touch your
Hmm.
client in more, and in multiple ways for you to get through the process, right? So yes, I
Okay.
do. Every meeting, I'm sending an email to say, hey, just thank you for your time. This is what we
Hmm.
discussed. Let's have more questions and set up a meeting next week. Um,
Yep. Okay.
Very, very important. With the
D-
ones I take on these 15-minute meeting ones, which I have one in about 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Um, yeah, is that I always send them an email afterwards, just summarizing exactly what we talked about. I just want to be clear, and that's what I started out with. Hey,
Yeah.
Alex, I just want to be clear on what we talked about today. These are the things we discussed. Is there anything I missed?
Okay. Yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
I
I
think
think
it's
account
important.
management's probably too big of a topic for us to try to dive in, 30 minutes into this thing. I'd like to get
Mhm.
Alex Farling, probably from
Yeah,
Lifecycle. He's on my list of people to get on the show. So I think at some point it makes sense to pull him on to talk, do like a fully deep dive thing like we did with Wes about account management and TBRs.
I agree. I totally agree. Account management is a single topic. If you think about it. All
Yeah,
these are single topics. When I do
really
when
could
I
be.
do a sales process call, when I do a sales process training, I actually, that training's a long. I've gotten it down to a full day. I used to take 2 days to do
Yeah,
sales training with people, but it's there's a lot to talk about, and we can't do it in this time.
there
And
is.
you guys have
Yeah,
other
that's fine.
things to do than listen to us.
Well, what I really like, we can go further in depth on any of these topics of
Mhm.
conversations if people want to comment and let us know. Hey, is there one particular one that you're struggle with? Because I'm always excited and willing to have these conversations where I can make Brett lead a little more, and I can learn something too, right? So those are always super great conversations with me. So I would
Yeah.
love to go deeper into any of these subjects. Just curious what the audience, just kind of like I did on LinkedIn for the IT Nation Secure post. I'm curious what the audience wants to hear about.
Right. That's a good point. Please let us know. I'll even offer up if you want to send me an objection and how would I handle that objection? Send me
Oh,
those.
that's a
Put
good
those
one.
in the
So
comments.
when we drop this video, I will definitely post and ask for objections, and we could do a whole video on handling objections. That'd be fun. We could do
I would
like
do
a
I would do a
yeah.
live stream. I
Oh,
would do a live
ooh,
stream.
that's a good idea. We should
So
totally do that. Okay.
in my
So once
sales
this video
my
drops, I'll put out there and we'll get some and we'll set up a live stream and maybe for an hour we'll sit there and the two of us will handle objections. That'd be
yeah,
fun.
that's a learning thing, right? How
Yep.
would Brett or Jason say it?
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this is
We're
business
at time. Yeah.
technicalities. We've got some time in here. Hopefully, you got to the end of the video where we gave away the prize. No, just kidding. Anyway, everyone have a great week, and we'll talk with you all soon.
Yeah. I'll see you next week.